chat. Say hello to Adi. Hi, Adi.
Hello,
Welcome in.
hello.
Adi Mansour. Um,
Hello.
I
Hi.
introduced Adi before for chat. I'll do it real quick again. Adi is a fellow friend, first of all, for disclaimer, and we went to high school together. But also, Adi is a amazing, talented human rights lawyer. He worked with Adala Center for the Arab minority rights in Israel, and was one of the founding members of the Haifa Youth Movements, as well as the head of Al Muntada, the Arab student forum, the Arab Law Student Forum at the Tel Aviv University. Welcome in, Adi. Feel free to add anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, thank you, Rawi, first of all. And I'm, first of all, happy to see you. I haven't seen Rawi in a long time.
Yeah.
And so this is a great chance. And um, first of all, lots of support and love for Al Qaws, amazing organization that have been doing amazing work in very challenging circumstances. Um, and yeah, like thank you for the introduction. I don't know what to add. Like now I'm just like doing a PhD in law in Florence in Italy. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so we use the term Italiastinian on this chat, Adi, in this community, where I say I'm Italiastinian because, like, my sister lives in Italy, but I don't know, there was a documentary in '98 about the Mundial, the World Cup in Schwammer, and it's about basically that half of town supports Italy. And I was like, oh, well, like the characters are neighbors, and we're in the documentary, so I'm proud that you're in Italy. Is the Italian pride is high, flying high today.
Yeah, and the Italians are giving a fight, believe me, like in
Yeah,
the last couple of months.
I was gonna ask, have you been connected to any of we've seen some pretty powerful solidarity from Italian workers, Italian people, Italian folks for Palestine. Have you kind of been a part of that as well yourself?
Yeah. So there are like activities, protests, and events happening all the time, all over Italy. And I've been part of a couple of things, and just doing some activism in the city. But also in my university, in the European University Institute, we have this working group on Palestine, organizing events, raising awareness, doing fundraisers. Um, so yeah, like there is a lot of movement here, and it's always happy to see. And I mean, we talked, me and Rawi, about the flotilla. Like you see also after the flotilla event and the interception of the flotilla before arriving to Gaza, just how strong the Italian streets have been in idea of the interception and supporting Palestine. and and yeah, it only strengthens the ideas that we have on liberating Palestine, that it is an international struggle for liberation and freedom for Palestinians, for repressed groups, whether it's race, gender, identity, religion, and whatsoever. It is a struggle that is unifying people from different spectrums, from different political perceptions, and from different backgrounds. And that says a lot, not only about the importance of the struggle of Palestine, but also the importance of unifying, hopefully, whether it's for Palestine, for Sudan, and for other places around the world, achieving the freedom and the equality and the justice that people, oppressed people of the world, especially in the global south, deserve.
Thank you.
uh,
Inspiring
yeah,
words.
yeah. I mean, I just like seeing the Italian street and how they are able to pressure their government, and push the government to do stuff that the government definitely does not want to do. Um, is definitely very inspiring and makes me only jealous that we're unable to build that momentum in, say, America. The Turtle Island. There is momentum here, more than I ever saw, but yeah. Um, do you want to give a? I mean, you talked a little bit about the, uh, Italy and like today. I want to just step back a little bit and kind of start from, for just in case we have anyone in chat who is unaware of like um our, like, where we come from and our background as Palestinian citizens of Israel, Arab 48 as we say in Arabic. Do you want to give a quick kind of introduction as like maybe like from a legal perspective, what is a PCI, Palestinian citizen of Israel?
Yeah, so and feel free also to stop me at any point. It's just the habit of talking a lot.
No,
Um, but uh, looking at Palestine today, a lot of the news that we receive and how we perceive Palestine, it's mostly about Gaza and the West Bank. And it's not a coincidence. The immediate direct violence uh, perpetrated against Palestinians in the forms of military occupation is very much evident and clear in both geopolitical areas. However, it is a fragmented idea of Palestine. Palestine and how a lot, especially in the last 2 years, we say from the river to the sea and discuss the whole of historic Palestine, looking at the whole geographical map. We have to also perceive and understand what are Palestinian citizens of Israel. What is this phenomenon of 2 million people, 2 million Palestinians that are living inside of Israel with Israeli citizenship, um, taking part in life within Israel. What is their situation? What is their legal and political situation? And to do that, we have to go back historically to 1948 and before 1948, and understanding the essentials, let's say, of the Palestinian cause. And to understand that, we first need to put in mind what is the Zionist settler colonial project, a project that was built in in the late 19th century, early 20th century, built on the idea of building a homeland for Jews from around the world, but essentially came into practice in creating not only colonies in Palestine, but also sustaining and building a system that is built on the supremacy of Jewish, later to be Jewish Israelis, but the Jewish population, and a distinctive and sole right of self-determination only for Jews in Palestine, which has been the essential component of the Zionist movement, and of course later came into what became the State of Israel. Now, at that moment of establishing the State of Israel, it's not this magical moment as portrayed a lot of times where Jews were emancipated and were able to establish their state. They established that state not only at the price of Palestinian self-determination, but mostly in the lives, in the lived experience, in the bodies and in the land of Palestinians who were living in that area. And what happened in 1948, but also started in 1947, was an ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian population throughout historical Palestine. It led to the ethnic cleansing of 700,000 Palestinians from their homeland, mostly to neighboring countries, to Lebanon, to Jordan, to Syria, through an well orchestrated, well planned military plan that the Zionist movement, through Zionist militias mostly, Haganah militia, Etzel and Lehi that also took part, combined together, they were able to kick out ethnically cleansed Palestinians from more than 530 villages and towns in Palestine. Now, that, of course, could never have been possible without the support of the British mandate or the British colonial power on Palestine. Um, and the promise that was given by Balfour in 1917 to the Zionist movement, especially to Rothschild, to the leader of the Rothschild family, promising that Britain, once it established its mandate on Palestine, its colonial rule on Palestine in 1919, that it will work to foster and to build a Jewish homeland in Palestine without giving any word about Palestinians or their rights of determination. And we're not talking about a period where Palestinians were, as also portrayed a lot of times by Zionists, ignorant or were not really dreaming of self determination and so on. There were movements for self determination, there were political movements, workers' movements, women's movements that were working in Palestine to push for a Palestinian state, for a democratic Palestinian state. And all that was, of course, diminished in 1948 through a plan that was initiated by the Zionist movement, but also made possible through Britain that helped the Zionist movement, pushed Palestinians, and had ships, literal ships, on the ports of Haifa, Jaffa, and other cities, and ethnically cleansed them to other towns.
Which,
So
if
this is
you allow me just to add there, important note also that even the Balfour Declaration. I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the Montague, um, um, uh, the Edwin Sir Edwin Montague's opposition to the Balfour Declaration. Like you got on one hand someone like Sir Rothschild who was basically lobbying the British government on the Zionist behalf, but you also had non-Zionist, even some may say anti-Zionist Jewish members of the cabinet who were opposing the Balfour Declaration. Yet, as we talk in today's language, the empire, um, the imperial ambitions, and the crossing between the imperial ambitions and the military industrial projects that like industrial complex that Britain had, kind of was more relevant to like to align with the Zionist lobby than the Jewish member of cabinet.
Yeah, yeah, totally. It's also forgotten a lot of times the series of oppositions, whether in Britain, whether within the Zionist movement. Within the Zionist movement, there was
Mm-hmm.
opposition to establish the state, the Jewish state within Palestine. There were voices that Palestine should not be the place. There was Uganda. There was so many different.
The head rabbi even supported Uganda. The head Zionist rabbi at that time supported Uganda.
Yeah, because there is a strong religious opposition to the existence of Israel as it violates core principles in the Jewish religion. Um, so yeah, it's also important to keep that in mind. Um, yeah, so following like what we're saying about Britain, the Zionist movement, and so on, what remained after the Nakba in 1948. Of course, it should be mentioned that the Nakba was not only ethnically cleansing and kicking people out of their homes, there were massacres happening in Deir Yassin and in Dawaimi and in other places where Palestinians were taken from their houses, put in lines, shot, whether it's kids, women, elderly men, um, sometimes put in mass graves, as happened in Tantura.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these stories that now we read about and we hear from our grandparents, like me and Rawi, are very much similar to what we see today in Gaza. The similarity is so crazy, yet it also teaches us of how this project has come into life. This settler colonial project has come into life, continued within the last more than 70 years, and we'll talk about that. Um, to sustain itself, it had to ethnically cleanse Palestinians, terrorize Palestinians, struck fear in the lives and the existence of Palestinians, and to dehumanize and basically to play with the existence and their life. Like the necropolitics of Palestinian existence is crazy, and the fact that Palestinians have no right to say whether we want to be alive or not, um, and that Israel as a system, as a security apparatus, decides who has the right to live when it
Yeah.
comes to Palestinians,
Like
and
at most
mostly
asking Qatar.
only
At
and
most, at most, they're involving Qatar and Egypt to ask, not the Palestinians,
yeah,
right? Like even in today, like till this day.
I just have a
yeah, yeah,
question on that.
yeah,
In terms of Palestinian citizens living inside Israel or occupied Palestine, like what could you explain, because you have like a human rights lawyer background. Um, could you explain what the like apartheid sort of the legal structure is behind it, and then what it's like to sort of live within that, you know, like
yeah,
what it's like on paper and then what it's like to experience it.
yeah. No, that's a great question, um, and and I think so. If we think about it like this, there is this establishing moment in 1948, the establishment of Israel. Um, about 152,000 Palestinians remain within occupied Palestine. The immediate thing, the Israeli government that was formed, they declare military rule on Palestinians who are living inside of Israel. And this is the fundamental moment, the establishing moment of the Israeli apartheid system. We tend to think of the apartheid system mostly, as I mentioned, the West Bank and Gaza, but that the testing ground, the starting ground of the apartheid system was inside the borders of Israel, was inside occupied Palestine. And this is where, while Israelis established what they perceive as a democratic state with voting rights, with the right to political participation, right to association, right to vote, and so on. For Palestinians, it created a parallel life, a parallel legal and political system. If you were living in occupied Palestine in 1949, 1950, 1951, until the 60s, you had to request a permit to leave your village and to go for another village or to another town. Any political participation, except for a very monitored one, which was mostly under the Israeli Communist Party, was prevented altogether.
Presumably that was
Um,
upheld by a pretty violent like security yeah, so
Yeah, it was
that
military rule at the time.
yeah, that was, it's not like, because some folks, might be like, oh, a law is like a vague thing, what does that really mean in practice? But in practice, it meant there were armed people surrounding your village, so you literally couldn't leave. And if you did, you would be brutalized.
yeah, so also to speak about law, you have to speak about how it's applied in real life, right? So imagine, um, now I'm in Italy, so it's easier to imagine within my the map that I'm in. So imagine I'm in Florence, and let's say Florence is an Arab town, and the town next to it, Pisa, is another Arab town. Between them, there's a Jewish settlement that was built. In order for me to go from Florence to Pisa, despite having relatives in Pisa and so on, I would have to request a military permit from the military commander in my area to leave my city. While at the same time, a Jewish Israeli that's living between us can move freely all around the country. So the
Right, I
free
get you.
movement
Mm.
was promised to Jewish Israelis and prevented for Palestinians. It's not only freedom of movement, it's not, any kind of journalism, any kind of media, not only monitored, it was prevented. People were smuggling newspapers, were listening to radio in secret. Um, so all of this is of course within the practice of law. So Palestinians were under a military legal structure while Jewish Israelis were building and are under the rule of the civilian structure. Of course, this was eventually copied in 1967 to the West Bank, but we will get to that. Now, going back into the legal structure, so we have a defining moment in 1948. What it also defined legally is who has a right to citizenship, right? So Palestinians who were within that piece of land, within occupied Palestine, immediately were given citizenship for different reasons. Historical analysis suggests that some of that was in order to get recognition in the UN, as Israel had obligations in order to meet up to get recognition as a state, and so on. But eventually, they received citizenship, they received even voting rights and so on. Whether it meant something, that's a different topic. But who is the community? Who is the political community? Was declared in 1948, and Palestinians were perceived as the enemy. So if we understand political communities as creating this friend slash enemy, which is a very old-fashioned Second World War perception of political communities, yet still exists very much today. Palestinians were declared as the enemy within law. Okay, first of all, as we mentioned, political participation, freedom of movement, but also land. So up until 1947, the Zionist movement only had 7% of the land in Palestine. Okay, mostly through buying land and so on. After 1948, the Zionist Israel, through amending and also legislating new laws, declared that this absentee law, that basically if you were outside the territory, outside the territory of occupied Palestine between 1948 until 1949, within specific dates, if you were outside that territory, even if you came back, the property that you had, whether it was a house, whether it was a land, goes into the hands of the custodian of this property. So it goes to the state. Okay,
By
and this way,
is that cemented by some kind of like founding constitutional document or something, something that came along with the basically the Nakba and the genocide? Is there something where that is backed, their project is backed by then the creation of like basically legal infrastructure somewhere where they're like, yeah, that's not yours anymore, that's ours now because this says so, you know? And then that
yeah,
begats future case study, like law, and it has
yes,
like a rippling effect, if that makes sense.
yeah. So in 1948, there was the Declaration of Independence, which is considered a legal document that is cited by the different courts, including the Supreme Court, as a binding legal document. It refers in all of it except one paragraph to Jewish Israelis only, having the right to self determination, having the right to collective rights, having the rights for cultural rights, for education, and so on. And only in one paragraph are non Jews um, represented, or let's say said in like a sentence or in a paragraph, where they will enjoy equal civil rights. One, no one enjoys equal civil rights in Palestine since 1948 until today within the Palestinian community. Second of all, it was a total. So you see, there is no mention of collective rights, no mention of land rights, no mention of all of these aspects, but also not recognizing the existence of a group called Palestinians. Rather, they were called non Jews. So you have Jews and you have non Jews. This is how the
Mm.
perception of communities was established in 1948. However, Israel does not have a constitution. This also should be mentioned. Israel is a state that, despite the fact it was established in an era of constitutionalizing
Mm.
states and legal systems, it did not establish a constitution. And one of the reasons of that is that there was this deal between the main Zionist movements and the Orthodox religious movement, um, where they will not serve in the military, but also uh, that because the main core principles of the state, separation of religion and state, religion rights, and so on, are contested, the constitution was delayed. So until today, there isn't a constitution. However, there are laws that have constitutional value.
Right.
So laws that
Yep.
that
Yeah, they're called
yeah.
base
So
laws.
within any future constitution, they will be become part of the constitution. However, like in any case, contemporary understanding of constitutionalism also says that constitutional moment, so looking at 1948 as a constitutional moment, so establishing moment for political communities, through that moment, we can understand what are the constitutional values and the constitutional principles. And that's why if your constitutional value is ethnic cleansing of a large group of people that is the native group of people,
Mm.
and if consequentially you establish a regime, whether it's directly said in the law, we will establish a military regime or not, but you establish a military regime for that group of people, then your constitution is built on apartheid.
Yep. It's
Whether
the
the
beginning of the
constitution.
structure. Yep.
Exactly, exactly. Um, and to strengthen this argument, I would like to. So we talked about land, but I also want to talk about citizenship and who has the right to immigrate to the state, because also one of the establishing principles, and now it's discussed a lot in the West, right, and in the U.S., who is allowed to be a migrant, who is allowed to be a future citizen, and so on. Um, so one of the things that was established in the 50s is the law of return. And according to the law of return, Jews from all over the world have a right to return to Israel. So basically, they have a right uh, to move to Israel and to settle in Israel, and immediately through a specific process that is written in regulations, they can acquire a citizenship. At the same time, Palestinians that were kicked out in 1948 are prohibited from their right of return, that is also recognized in the UN Resolution 181, that recognizes the right of return of Palestinians to their homeland, and also prevents, until today, these Palestinians from returning to their homeland and acquiring any kind of legal status that allows them to live in their homeland. So you see that within the basic laws that were established during those years, citizenship, immigration, land, ownership, political participation, and so on, were decided as through the framework of ethno-national supremacy of Jewish Israelis on Palestinians within all the main establishing principles of a state. And within that framework, Palestinian citizens of Israel entered into the political life of Israel, or the political existence of Israel. So it is from the start, from the moment of the start, we're talking about not only on equal, but a repressive structure that is built, that is only sustained by the repression of the other. So, in order to maintain, and this is very important because we will see it in future laws, in order to maintain an ethno national supremacy, in order to maintain another founding principle that later became part of the constitution through a basic law, a sole right to self determination for Jewish Israelis. In order to maintain that and sustain it, you have to securitize, dehumanize Palestinians, and create them as the eternal enemy for the existence of the state, but also for the existence of the political community. Yeah.
In
So this is like, yeah.
in at a human level, is this so I'm obviously an outsider, but I see things like it affects the geography of how people live, where people, when they're trying to move, move from, like you said, kind of different villages from within and without, occupy Palestine and Gaza and the West Bank, all over, there is like a like you said, like underneath there's this foundation of settler colonialism that by definition casts out, does a terra nullius, this is our land now, nothing happened before, therefore it's almost like a legal scorched earth kind of tactic, and then you build this apparatus around it, and that apparatus becomes the self-fulfilling prophecy of sort of just militarization on militarization. From a human level, day to day, like if you woke up, and you had to go to work, how is that felt for a lot of folks there? Is it like where you go to work is the overarching dynamic of it? It's probably like an Israeli company and you have to work for them or you'll starve, and then you have to go through a checkpoint or something, or what's it like day to day?
Yeah. So you mean basically mostly during those years, right? Like in the first 20 years we're talking?
I
Yeah,
think
it would be good to know then and
today,
and now as well.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So back then, and this is mostly, of course, stories that we hear. I'm not that old, um, but um, people who wanted, of course, the whole work, the whole economic industry, the whole infrastructure of Palestinians was all destroyed, right? So we're talking about not a small community, but a whole nation that their economic, cultural, um, transportation, political parts, all of this was completely destroyed. And let's say the main political leadership, the main uh, income, aspects of income for Palestinians all were either killed or destroyed or were ethnically cleansed to outside the country. So a lot of people found themselves either jobless, um, or that their land that they so we're talking about a very much farmer society, so their land was taken or they couldn't get to their land because they were prevented from getting to their land, um, or that the place that they worked and doesn't exist anymore, and so on. And at the same time, the state that was being built needed labor. And this is where Palestinians became a major
Yep.
exploited, exploited group to build the country, basically.
yeah.
Um, whether it's back then, whether it's until, let's say, until last year, 2 years ago, the main workers in construction and so on are Palestinians,
Yeah. Even
and
from
they are
my like,
exploited. Yes.
no, I just was gonna say like, even as you mentioned like stories like that's my grandpa took his eldest four sons and went out to construct Israeli towns. Like got permits to go work and construct Israeli towns. Like that was his source of income after 48.
Yeah, and also we need to mention that there was a difference between cities and villages. So villages and Palestinian towns were completely put under military rule. You need to ask a permit usually. There is the Mukhtar of the village, so like the leader of the village or the town, that is in direct contact with the military commander. And you approach him, he approaches the military commander, and then your life is basically in the hands of this very strong person, influential person in the village. In what is called today mixed towns, which are Palestinian towns that were mostly ethnically cleansed, but small groups of people, small communities remain, like Haifa, Jaffa, Led, Ramli, other towns. I come from Haifa. So what happened in these towns is that Palestinians that remained were basically collected from the different parts of the city, put in one neighborhood, and this neighborhood became controlled, sieged, like a ghetto, basically a ghetto inside the city. Um, and then, yeah, the freedom of movement was a little bit easier in these cities. So, like in my grandfather, he also lost. He had a job, and he was building a future before 48, and so on. And he ended up working as a taxi driver within the city. And of course, like imagine that he lost his house. He had a house. He lost his house. He lost his property. He lost everything, and had to start even from below zero. So this was the, let's say, the general situation that was back then. Um, Now looking at today, um, today we see, first of all, this military rule that we're talking about ended in the 60s. Following that, there was a change in the political situation, more possibilities for political participation, and so on. But within those 20 years, most of the land of Palestine was taken by the state. Most of the institutions were built by the state or by powerful figures within Israel that are mostly Jewish Israelis. Most of the agricultural infrastructure, the factories, and so on was all run by Jewish Israelis. Moment of getting out of the military rule 20 years after, you enter this world where you are immediately the lesser one in the system. So even if you become subjugated to the same civil system, the same legal system, still still in the structure, in the core, you are unequal because the conditions of the creation of the state and all its infrastructure was built basically without you. Or to say it more clearly, it was built on behalf of you or on behalf of what you have left around you, and then until you were moved and lost agency and put under military rule. So we see a shift in the 70s, 80s, um, and then in the 90s, of course, after the first Intifada, we're talking in the 90s about the Oslo agreements. So it's a period where Palestinians generally, whether it's in Israel or Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza, are seeing some kind of what was then advertised as political change, as political promise. I cringe when I want to say the word, but the peace that was promised back then,
There was at
is
least
like,
hope that maybe,
yeah,
like, there's hope that maybe things are gonna change a little bit to the better.
yeah, yeah. And during those years, Palestinians in Israel started. There was this rising awareness of Palestinian identity. Of course, something that I forgot to mention is that during all these years, there was complete erasure of the Palestinian identity. So Palestinians were taught in school and outside, you are not Palestinians, you are Arab Israelis. You have to sing. So imagine this is like fucking crazy, that in school you had to sing the song of independence and songs of Israel in Arab schools, and then people from the government will come to see and watch Palestinian children as they are singing for the Israeli state and like raising the Israeli flag. So there was a whole attempt of brainwash.
It's
Yes,
like
Yeah.
Rami.
I
psychological
know.
warfare on
I
your
was just
like.
gonna say for chat, Elias Suleiman's movie "The Time That Remains" presents that in a very very good way, and we watched it on here already like twice, I think. So
Brilliant
for
movie.
those who haven't watched it, definitely recommend to go watch it. That's all. I was just
Yeah.
gonna. Sorry. Go ahead, lesbian.
No,
Or
it's a
chest.
brilliant movie that really presents this very clearly. So yeah, so what happened in the 90s, but it also started before, right? Also in the 70s, there was the Land Day that really raised awareness of Palestinian citizens of Israel. But in the 90s, it became more structural. So in the 90s, Palestinians started establishing civil society organizations, movements, a lot of bottom-up activism that was starting in between Palestinian citizens of Israel. Adala, for example, the NGO I work with, was established in the 90s.
Mm,
And a lot of the NGOs were established during that time. And there was also a strong opposition to Oslo within Palestinian citizens of Israel,
mhm,
mostly because Palestinian citizens of Israel were saying, we are forgotten.
mm.
People are discussing the issue of Palestine and solving the military rule um, in the West Bank and Gaza and establishing a Palestinian state in the borders of 1967. But what about us?
Yeah.
And what about us? They're not only asking about what about us as a group living inside of Israel. But what about the core issues of Palestine? What about the right of return? What about the return to the villages and the towns that were ethnically cleansed in 1948? What about the the system of supremacy that is in Israel that would always, and as we see today, would always want to expand, would always want to take more, and to take more land and to do crazy crimes as we see in the genocide in Gaza. So it was asking core questions, and within that, other political parties were established during that time, also challenging these
Was there a
perceptions.
was there a lot of money that came in at around Oslo? So we haven't met, but I work in in the international sector. I've worked in both human rights and humanitarian like INGOs basically. So yeah, I've seen what budgets exist out there. Let me put it that way. um and
Yeah.
so I don't say this in like the cynical reactionary all aid is terrible because I do my work because you know I care about it. But w- when you have a huge influx of money into an area, it has a distinct political effect, which is that people begin to engage with those institutions. So do you find at that period of time in history, the people who feel the most marginalized, and like you say, the Palestinian citizens of Israel who are basically don't have much political, social, kind of cultural institutions that are giving them representation at the table, at the you know the decision where the decisions are being made. Do you find the actual process of the peace deal in itself further embedded that because you would have more and more negotiations kind of just with essentially what became the Palestinian Authority, if I'm right with my
Yeah, I think you describe it perfectly. Like Oslo and the influx of money that was received and corrupted
yep.
not only the PLO, but it corrupted, and I'm sad to say, but like the during that time, the struggle for Palestine that became institutionalized in what became known as the Palestinian Authority. So of course, like one of the key issues about Oslo is that it built the ground um, that we see today to creating a negotiating deal. Let's call it that in the most naive way to establish. Let's say like you're in negotiations, and the second step in your negotiations becomes a state. This is basically also like it created the situation where you have a problem, you solved literally not even 1% of it, and from that you create a whole political system, and that of course created corruption systems, and today the Palestinian Authority is the main, let's say, provider in the West Bank of jobs. So it creates a
Mm,
whole corruptive system of people and people who are affiliated with the Palestinian Authority. Um, that yeah, it sustains and creates this system that remains dependent. So you push a lot of money and a lot of projects in the West Bank, a lot of projects in Gaza, and so on. But at the same time, at the expense of dependency on the macro level, dependency
exactly. Yeah.
the, of
And
the
also
Palestinian
it's
Authority
off
and everything that's under it. Yeah,
it does it feels
Um,
it feels fair to say now we know that Israel, the Israeli state, was never going to do half of the things that were on the table. And I think, I mean,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah, we have hindsight, but it's more the. It's very clear to me. I've read some of the WikiLeaks emails and stuff in between state agents and Netanyahu and other actors in Israel, and it's very clear to me Israeli politicians knew how to play that system like a fiddle. Like they knew how to, and I believe it's what's happening again in Gaza right now, but um, they knew how to get the international community to develop a aid like sort of architecture, as it were, that only resulted in divisions within Palestine and further drove people against one another when obviously solidarity was needed at the most on the hope of statehood. And I feel like we're witnessing this again. you know, I'm trying not to be too cynical, but that feels like that's what's driving things underneath at the moment.
If I mean, not to change the topic, I just wanna just give a. I mean, Adi, you're obviously always welcome to stay even longer than you said, but just let me know when you wanna also transition to questions from chat. I've been collecting them in chat, just so you know. You can send the questions in chat, and I'll collect them. And at the end, I'll kind of we'll have a moment where we ask them all. Um,
It's
but yeah,
frozen. Has it frozen your side? It's frozen for me.
yeah. I don't know if he disconnected, if it got disconnected on his side. Do?
Hello.
Let me text 1 second. Oh,
Oh, a brief second of being able to hear you then, and Ray, I'm just going to use this opportunity to go to the loo super quickly. I'll be back in a sec.
no worries. Discord is the worst. Yeah. It's just because everyone is already there. Damn Italian internet. I was thinking that before brains. I was like, come on, Italian internet, don't fail us. Come on, Italian internet. الو سامعني تقدر تكتب لي. You can write for me like in chat. Like I'm trying to figure it out, chat. Okay. 1 second. I'm gonna mute myself for you, chat, just because I'm calling on the side. Doing IT.
Hey, have we? Are we? What's happening?
We are doing some IT um tech support, and if not, we'll jump over to meetings. I'm preparing a backup meeting, like Google
Okay,
meetings.
no worries. Oh my gosh, your friend's so intelligent. Lawyers, yeah, I work with lawyers, and it's like, or human rights lawyers, and the attention to detail is, yeah, wild. Very cool. welcome in everyone as well. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I don't know about you folk, but this has been very, very informative for me so far. And your friend's a great speaker as well. Oh, hello. You might be back.
لا مش سامعينك. اوكي خلينا احضر ال Okay, we still can't hear him. So I'm switching over to here. اوكي. اكتب لي ايميلك على الواتساب. يلا عشان ننقل على الميتينجز. اوكي. Okay, I'm switching to meetings.
Okay, do you want to DM me the link and I'll jump in?
Put it on the side in the side chat here.
Cool. Yep. Okay. Thank you, love. Right, I'll see you there in a sec.
See you there. Let me copy this. Copy.
Oh gosh, bright. Don't you fucking dare start a camera. Good. There we go. Hey.
Okay, I sent Adi the email. By the way, chat, we are at...
Oh yes, let's check.
414. Let's go.
Woohoo! Yeah.
Let's go, chat. You can do, remember, exclamation point, queer, gay, القوس, any one of these.
Gay.
I mean, do you hear me, Lesbian Hot Sauce? Because
Yeah,
I can't hear you. For
Oh,
some
you can't
reason.
hear me.
Hold on, maybe I need to allow
Hold on.
audio from here. I mean, hold on. Okay, maybe it's this. Hold on 1 second. I
Hello?
think it's.
You should be able to hear me, hopefully. I can hear you. Hello? This is awesome.
Yes, you can hear me now.
Yes, I can hear you. Don't worry.
Nice. Use camera. Allow. Hey. Okay. I got my camera. I got my microphone. اوكي لحظة رجعت على الديسكورد. اوكي. بتفضل ايش بتفضل قدامي؟ نقدر نرجع لهون كمان بسهولة. ايش افضل؟ Okay, what do you think, LHS? Should we do Google Meeting or Discord? His Discord is back.
Okay, let's go back to Discord. And we've still got
Just go back to Discord.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm gonna...
Well done, everyone, by the way, for donating. Thank you so much.
شايف شوي كتير كبيرة بديش الفريم وراي يكون أوسع عن هيك يعني. Alright, we're back, chat.
مش شايفه.
Chat مش شايف. أنت بأي أنت على الستريم تبعي بتخيل صح؟ You're on my stream.
Yeah,
Oh, la la la. Stream, la la la. Okay, okay. Chat, you need to go to this to twitch.tv/Reiki. Hold on. Let me give you the link.
I feel like a boomer. Like I.
Here, actually, I'll send you on your phone, and then you can have the chat on your phone.
Okay, perfect. Yeah,
TV
just see the
slash.
questions also. Maybe we can answer some.
I'm like, why is my headphones not working? Weird, but that's just my headphones. Yeah, I'm collecting questions in chat. I collected 3 questions so far. Yeah, you should be able to go to the link and then like watch the stream. I mean, you can mute it because it's gonna be delayed, but you can see the chat there. Two Arabs, as you wish. No, as you wish, loop. chat بتضحك علينا. Oh, oh, yeah, Allah شو عملت أنا. Yeah, I made something wrong on my side. Um, you guys can go back to talking. It's just on like my headphones are only
Not
working
working?
on one. No, no, I messed up the settings on my headphones. I turned off the right headphone, and now I can hear you only in my left ear, and that's all. But I'll fix it. It's on my side. It's something I.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
What was the name of the organization you work for? Sorry. Ah, you're muted still. Sorry.
Sorry, Adala.
Ardena.
Adala.
Adela.
It's justice in Arabic. Adala.
Justice. Okay. Um, is this a sort of classic NGO that works to well, what is it that you guys focus on
Yeah,
doing? Do you do things like strategic litigation
yeah.
or everything, all of the above? I presume.
Yeah, so maybe I'll explain a little bit about the organization, what have we done, and but mostly what also we've been doing since the genocide started, because it has been a huge shift in the type of work, as one can imagine. But Adala was established as a legal center representing Palestinian citizens of Israel, and we have so we work on Palestinians' rights, mostly through indeed strategic litigation. Most of the previous litigation was in front of the Supreme Court, so challenging racist, unconstitutional laws, or how we perceive them, of course, in front and policies in front of the Supreme Court, also administrative court and other types of legal systems. And it expanded through the years to represent all Palestinians in all areas under Israeli control. So we work in Jerusalem, we work in the West Bank, we work inside in the occupied Palestinian territories, and we have also cases. We had cases in Gaza, um, and we work in three main. We have three units. So the political and civil rights unit, where I work, I'm part of this unit. We have land and planning unit, and social and economic rights unit. So each unit is focusing on different rights and different issues, different cases. Um, so it could be in my department, we work a lot about political participation, political prisoners, um, constitutional rights, and so on. So examples of that is we represented the Palestinian six, so six NGOs that were declared illegal or terrorist organizations in 2022. Damir, Al-Haq, Bisan, and other organizations. We challenged a lot of laws in front of the Supreme Court, including the Prevention of Family Unification Law. We challenged the Nakbi Law, and one of the main laws that's part of the so-called Israeli constitution is the nation state law, the basic nation state law, which declares Israel as a Jewish democratic state with Jewish Israelis having the sole right to self-determination within historical Palestine from the river to the sea, and that the state will foster the building of settlements in the West Bank. So that's another example. We also represent activists and politicians in criminal cases. So I worked a lot on criminal law, mostly when it comes to freedom of expression. Um, so this is like one of the major topics that have been happening with Palestinian citizens of Israel before the 7th of October, but in the last 2 years it became much stronger, where a lot of activists, students, workers, and so on are arrested, interrogated, and a lot of them facing criminal charges for posts and content that is posted online. Um, Mostly, we found that it's mostly on Instagram, also a lot of cases from Facebook, Twitter, content from YouTube, and so on. And we're talking about hundreds of cases a year where people are repressed and arrested since the genocide started. And we represent a lot of these individuals. Also, we had cases of universities that repressed their students and filed disciplinary charges against their students. So we also represented them. It was interesting that since the war started, almost all Israeli academic institutions, but we had 34 academic institutions that started or initiated cases against their students for content online, claiming that it is inciting to terrorism, sympathizing with terrorism, and so on. So this is the legal work. We do a lot of litigation. We also do a lot of reports and a lot of analysis of government policies and plans of new legislation and discriminatory laws. We also do a lot of advocacy work, whether it's in front of the UN, with other NGOs and institutions around the world. So yeah, this is like an overview
Yeah,
what we do in
yeah,
Adala.
awesome. Do you, out of interest, this is very similar to a lot of like activists I work with. When you're using something like strategic litigation, and so I'm not a lawyer, so this is a little bit. If I ask a silly question, please forgive me. You know, I'm not someone who
Oh,
spends
please.
their day in a courtroom, but often, so that where I work at the moment, lots of people are challenging homophobic laws that were brought in by the British, and that's a big part of what we do is trying to give them resources so that they can work out how to overcome those laws. And they often will take activists and a couple of local community members, and then they will build a case law around using other law, either internationally or domestically, to say that someone's rights have, like, there's an overarching, this law discriminates on these bases which should be protected under some other law. Therefore, this main piece of like penal codes is normally what it is at that time, but this main like problematic piece of legislation has to be thrown out, and that's what they'll go for, and they'll go all the way up whatever local to national court circuit they need to. Is that similar? Are you having to use internal legislation and laws and court case? I don't know if it's case law on case law in Palestine, Israel, but what is it that you're using to kind of take someone or institutions to court to do something like defend the right to freedom of speech or something?
Yeah, no, I love this question because like really it like dissects the work that we do, because sometimes it could be that we go immediately against the law, right? If we're talking about a law that we perceive it as an apartheid law, as an unconstitutional law, and so on, we go and challenge it directly in the Supreme Court. But to challenge that, of course, it is through strategic litigation. So we find, and a lot of times we are approached by individuals who are harmed by this law. that are immediately affected by this law. So, an example, for example, in family unification, we represented couples and families that were prevented from living under the same rooftop um, because Israel prevents Palestinians from unifying their families and gaining citizenship. So we had families and couples that we, sorry, that we represented. There are cases that start from more bottom up in courts, right? So it starts from a case of someone who faced criminal charges for posts online or for a speech and so on. And then we represent in the criminal charge, and then we go up in challenging and appealing and so on. Usually, in freedom of expression, we represent cases of political leaders and less so of, let's say, day-to-day activists or people who were arrested despite having no political activism. And the reason is that there's this idea or perception that political leaders who aim to represent a group of people and to politically represent are able to also defend the speech that they gave. And we in Adala, we want to challenge the core principles of the law and all preventions of freedom of expression. And to do that, we do need to go forward in a case where the interest of the client, meaning also the interest of expanding freedom of expression, not only for her or him, but also for the community and for
Mm.
Palestinians generally, it goes with the interest of legal representation. While at the same time, if you have individuals who were caught and arrested for posts online while they have, I don't know, regular jobs or they are students and so on, the price that they would have to pay for such kind of litigation is not always in the interest, in their personal interest as individuals. And therefore, we eventually we take these cases of repression of freedom of expression or criminalization of speech, especially of leaders, in order to prevent the repression of people that are taking part in bottom-up activism, but also to expand as much as possible freedom of expression and prevent as much as possible the criminalization of speech. And it can go for years. Like we have a criminal case of a leader from Abna al-Balad, a leftist party, that we have been representing in this case for, I think, 6 years. This criminal case has been going and discussing the details of every word and what does this word mean, what is the effect of this word and so on, in order to prevent the criminalization of speech, of religious text, of the main political aspects that represent Palestinians and so on. And sadly, a lot of times we do not succeed. So this is also the reality we face in strategic litigation, is that especially in the political climate today in Israel that is very much deep into the courts, there is a whole dehumanizing and securitizing of Palestinians. So Palestinians are seen as a threat to national security, and national security is seen as ethno-national supremacy. That we find ourselves in situations where challenging racist laws, challenging the criminalization of speech becomes limited to almost impossible in the situation that we have today in courts. And if we look at the work that we have been having for the last 2 years, it's mostly defense work, meaning that we're defending people that are immediately arrested, immediately kicked out from school, that are facing criminal charges, that are facing policies, and so on. So we are less in the ability to initiate legal
Mm.
challenges
Mhm.
that we think are necessary, and this is a natural result of an apartheid state. Whenever the apartheid system becomes tighter and stronger, you are moving immediately from constitutional law, arguing of the main principles of the state, to criminal law, where the state is attacking and criminalizing every single aspect of your life.
And
Which
it's
is
yeah, it's
also
sorry, love, go on.
no. I just wanted to say, like, also very relevant to what's happening a lot with America, American courts, and like the child, like the Trump administration with domestic policies, and and the liberal kind of response going to the court, and then constantly having that also move and change, and one day one court decides something, but then the next day the second court is already kind of moving, changing the goalposts, changing the whole like.
Yeah, and you can see it in I have like friends who work in the US and representing people who get arrested by ICE, and their main focus today is on like the mere defense of like the tiniest possibility of the conditions of arrest, of you know, trying to fight as much as possible
Mm.
the arrest warrants and the also the kicking them out from the country and so on. So yeah, our work became also similar in that in the last 2 years we're working on the conditions of political prisoners who are facing starvation and torture inside prisons. So a lot of our work was that. Working on humanitarian aid entering to Gaza, or the prevention of humanitarian aid from entering into Gaza and deliberate starvation. Um, so I think, yeah, looking at the macro, you see how when the intensity and the banality of violence and evil becomes so strong, the main core of our work becomes defense. So defending as much as possible to I don't know, to try to also maintain a fair trial to individuals we represent, which
Mm.
also a lot of times does not happen. But one of the main aspects of representation, and this is what I want to talk about in human rights work, is that lawyers become the main connection between those imprisoned, those arrested, those subjugated to repression, and the outside world. And this is very essential, I think, in our work is the human level in our work that goes even deeper than also the legal representation, as you are also supporting and giving a backbone to the people who are losing any kind of contact with their families and with their friends and with their community and so on.
You become
Uh,
like an access to the outside world, basically, and an intermediary.
you, yeah, you are an access to the outside world, and sometimes you are the only, uh, to say, maybe friendly face that they are
Mm.
facing in behind bars, where in Israeli prisons, like the conditions are things that we have never seen. Like
Mm.
the conditions of political prisoners have always been bad, but in the last 2 years, we are talking about levels of torture and
Mm.
dehumanization that I don't think they are describable in any way.
It's absolutely horrific. The UN report at the start of this year about sexual abuse in for prisoners. It's my gosh, it's just horrific.
Yeah.
Do you folk get some psychosocial support as well? Because this is a significant amount for workers who have to fill this invisible gap, as it were, and actually be much more than, oh, I'm just someone filing a a legal. I'm just someone defending someone. You suddenly are becoming an entire like social pillar for someone, which
Yeah.
we does take a burden. Do you folk get some support with that as well?
Yeah, we had at some points we had like group support and group therapy and so on. But what I what I find sadly funny is that human rights lawyers will always tell you I'm fine,
I'm
and
fine. Let's
like
get on with it.
yeah, let's get on with it. Give me the
Yeah.
next case, which is like so unhealthy, and eventually not, you get into a burnout, and you start questioning the your life and get into an existentialist crisis. Um, but yeah, I think there should be more support. A lot of
Mm.
NGOs do that and provide support, and we also had that instance. But I think there is something in the horrific reality when you see like the prisoners and the condition of prisoners and people in Gaza and so on, that you don't feel that there is anything wrong with the condition you are in or your life, and that you have to give all your energy to support these people and these individuals,
Yeah.
which says a lot. It says a lot about the situation, I think, and how crazy and surreal it is mostly.
Gosh.
Um, yeah, I'm sorry because I had like all the technical issues
I
from
love your
before.
background, Rawi.
It's
I
literally
need
as things broke down. This is literally Knafi. By the way, this is in Chicago, Adi.
in Chicago.
Chicago is little Palestine, like Knafi Nabil like whatever you want, like
I need
the
I
Arab
need I need
the
knafe.
the Arab Palestinian like moms that start cooking like home food and selling it that we have in Haifa, you find in Chicago. Like it's Chicago is if you want the place in America to feel the most like home, still not home, is definitely here. Yo, is the هلا بيك حبيبي هلا هلا هلا. Okay, so I know you need to go sometime soon. Can I?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have three questions at least that I have collected in chat. Chat. If you asked a question that I missed, if you're not Crescent, quit all my jobs or brains, and you want to ask a question, put it in chat right now, and I'm gonna start firing them with your permission.
Hit me.
All right. Well, first question is interesting thoughts on the word regime. Is it intentionally chosen to indicate a benevolent state, or is it just a norm in your context? Americans use it as derogatory a lot, and wanted to ask this.
If you perceive it as derogatory, so be it.
For me, I'm like, it's like, I don't know. I've been asked that question before. I'm like, I feel like it's like American regime is a thing, like regime is just, you know. Uh,
I just find the word regime, but sometimes I also like to use apparatus uh, to better describe something that is beyond the state. And Israel is beyond the state.
mhm.
There is the state of Israel, but to perceive the nature of not only the state but also the society, there is something that is beyond only, let's say, the typical modern liberal legal and political system. It is a regime, it is a movement, a settler colonial movement that, yeah, I just think that describing it only as the Israeli state does not,
Yeah.
not enough.
Yeah, I mean, interesting that you mentioned the apparatus. For often I say like the military apparatus, the political apparatus within the like the Israeli state. But yeah. All right. Second question. How does the law of quote unquote right of return is justified in the legal sense? The word return. Obviously, we know the narrative around the biblical justification. Just wonder how it's written slash justified in a legal sense.
So, in the legal sense, the law describes the migration or the settlement of Jews in Israel as aliyah. Aliyah in Hebrew, it's how do I translate this, Rawi?
I mean, so for Americans and I'm assuming most Europeans, they're familiar with the term aliyah in the Israeli sense because it is used, to promote for Jewish Americans to
Yeah.
do aliyah, aliyah.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. So the meaning of the word is basically you are not migrating and you are not an immigrant. You are
returning.
not you are not a refugee as well. So this is also an important discussion, especially when we're talking about post World War II. The idea is that this is the political community that existed long time ago. You have a right to get back, basically. So aliyah, so it's like going up, or it's like an
I guess
incline. I don't know how to describe it.
the best way to say like if you couple it with aliyah me'alat, yeridah me'alat, it's coming home and leaving home. It's not literal. The
Yeah,
literal translation is coming like like getting up and getting down. Like
yeah.
like yeah, climbing up, climbing down from your home, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, but the question of how this law has not been challenged, so this law cannot be challenged in the Supreme Court because it was um, uh, like it was created and amended in the 50s, um, and the challenging of rules, let's say later. So back in the 50s, there was no one to challenge it, right? So
Well,
we're
there was one case of a Christian monk that was born to Jewish parents, and that kind of solidified the fact that um, um, if you converted out of Judaism, you cannot apply for it. Yet, if you're an atheist, somehow you could still apply for it. Like there's that one case that I know about. I don't know about other cases myself.
yeah, like specific cases, there are cases that of people trying to get a status. A lot of Palestinians also that try, but fail because of the law that is banning family unification, which bans
Hmm.
citizenship for Palestinians. But challenging the law as a law, today it's not challenged. This is what I wanted to point out.
Yeah.
But just can I add something very little about this? What we had because we represented in the ban of family unification. So Israel bans Palestinians from the West Bank, Gaza, and inside the occupied Palestine to unite under one roof within occupied Palestine. And one of the which is of course a demographic law that is meant to maintain and preserve a Jewish majority within the state of Israel. Um, but one of the main arguments that they have is security concerns, that these Palestinians pose a threat to the security because they sympathize with the Palestinian cause and so on. The interesting thing, so this law was first enacted 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, in 2002, I think. And since then, it's amended year after year because it's a temporary order. But the current arguments is that the kids and the grandkids of Palestinians of family unification sympathize with the Palestinian cause, and therefore they pose a threat to the state of Israel. And why am I saying this? Because the perception of Palestinians is that you are a threat through your mind and your body, whether you are already born, or you are alive, or you are dead. This is very important. Yeah, exactly. So it's the identity and the existence and the non-existence, because you have the case of withholding Palestinian bodies. So even when you're dead, you're a threat to the state.
Yeah. Um, and the last question here is actually specifically more about Al-Qaws. Um, um, I don't know how much you can talk about the PA legal system here, but the question is, since the PA banned the organization 2019 in the West Bank, like, what kind of legal challenges do they face there? What kind of legal challenges do they face in Jerusalem, where they're currently operating out of? How's the like how's the organization trying to operate, if at all, in the West Bank today?
I honestly don't know. Like I've been in contact with Al Qaus only a couple of years ago, and since then, I don't have a lot of information
Yeah.
on how they are operating in the West Bank, so I don't want to answer in a way that is not fair to them and to how they are being active. But on that note, because also we didn't talk about this and we talked on the phone, Rawi, is how Israel uses, weaponizes, and manipulates Palestinians according to their sexual identity and how they basically use Palestinians as agents, sometimes from the West Bank, threatening them that they will tell um, like their dad, their mom, their community, that they have videos of them, that they would tell them that they are gay or that they are lesbian or that they are trans and so on. Um, blackmailing, totally blackmailing, and tell them, okay, we will not tell anyone, but you have to provide information on this and that. You have to work for us on this and that. And it goes, of course, this is the most um, radical example, but we also have examples where activists are arrested on like very regular activities, also Palestinian citizens of Israel, not only in the West Bank. And they would tell them in like a very regular conversation, so it's not even an investigation. Yeah, just so you know, we know about you, and we know that what that would create for your family. So beware, and don't do this, don't do that. And this is the country that, of course, it's not new to anyone, I think, here or in the chat, that pinkwashing is their playground, and
Mm.
showing and showing how Israel is this safe haven for the LGBTQ community, plus community, and how it creates these safe spaces and so on. It's the country. It's the country and the leading country in creating dangerous spaces for the community, and then especially in so it creates the conditions of intersectionality where if you are a Palestinian, anything that is attached to that Palestinian can be used against you. Anything that is part of your identity can be used against you. Um, and it's crazy the reality that people from the LGBTQ plus community face in the West Bank and in Gaza and so on. And so many different layers, right? Like you mentioned also the PA and how the PA banned their calls. So you have that layer and the community, and you have also the state and the military. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Israel takes a major part in this, and I don't want to speak on behalf of this topic. And I know that someone from Al Quds is going to be
I mean, I
also.
didn't. I actually did. I didn't hear back, and I know Hadil. They went on a vacation. They said they might try to come on from Dahab,
Okay.
but I like. I won't. Like, it's okay if they don't. Like, I understand.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak on anyone from the lived experiences within the queer community, and I think it's fair to hear also from people who are within that struggle. But I do think that it's not fair to ignore also the community aspects and the societal aspects uh, within a lot of circles of conservatism within the Palestinian community that prevent that, and that also politically, like where a lot of challenges that the queer movement and also the feminist movement have faced, even from people who are supposedly progressive, supposedly, is that no, 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 this can wait. We have to wait on this. we first need to liberate Palestine. And like, like seriously, um, so a lot of this aspect it comes from different angles. So you have, of course, the repression of the state, but also this tendency, this very clear, even political decision, I would describe it, to prevent any kind of political progressiveness and liberation of the ideas that we have established within the Palestinian community, in order to really foster this, let's say, movement. I don't know how to describe it exactly, but in a way that allows spaces to talk about intersectionality, to talk about queer rights, talk about feminist rights, talk about so many different aspects that we have to talk about now. Now, now, now. Like nothing can wait. And like really you're gonna tell me like inshallah when Palestine is liberated we will talk about it. Like this is like the worst excuse. Like as someone, we all live under Israeli occupation, we know that that is like the biggest inshallah that you can tell anyone.
Yeah, it's also like it's a very again the conversation. If you look at the conversation within Western, leftist movement is literally more of the same, of that same conversation of like, oh, we gotta focus on class war. We can't look at marginalized communities, whether it's like black community members pointing out racist things that are prevalent even within liberal and more leftist leaning kind of spaces, or whether it's queer folks.
Yeah.
And like it's also like a conversation that is very like relevant and understandable, I guess, in a lot of people in these communities, in here and in our chats, in the Western world.
Guys, I do need to move because I'm invited to dinner.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
This was lovely. Thank you so much for coming on. Uh,